So we built 3 apps in AI Studio on the show a couple weeks ago, but it feels like we've only unlocked maybe 10% of what this thing could do. So today, we're going to be joined by Logan Kilpatrick from Google DeepMind to explain the rest. Welcome, humans, to the latest episode of the Neuron AI Explained. I'm Corey Knowles, joined as always by Grant Harvey. How's it going today, Grant?
Doing good, doing good. How are you, Corey?
I'm doing good. Really excited about this call. How about you?
Oh yeah, I cannot wait. I'm a big fan of Logan, so getting to
Same.
talk to him and pick his brain about everything AI Studio is going to be a serious blast.
It is, and I think there are so many things we could really dive into because Google's got, one of the interesting things about Google right now is they have a million things going on.
Oh yeah,
It's like they're constantly shipping something.
yeah.
It may not be a thing we're ever going to touch. It might be specific to researchers in biomedical fields or something, but
hmm
there's pretty consistently something always coming out of their AI labs.
Yeah, I mean, Google has so much stuff, let alone the Gemini app, AI Studio. They've got Notebook LM. They've got their Google Labs, where they're creating all this experimental stuff. They've got their Gemini command line tool. They've got Firebase Studio. They've got Jules, which is a new background coding agent. They've got Colab. I mean, there's
They've got a
a
lot
lot.
going on.
There's a lot going on. So
It's
yeah, AI Studio
it
is definitely uh, just like the tip of the iceberg, but it's one of the coolest uh, holistic interfaces that Google has, and I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to it and they really like using it.
I agree. I think if you're a person who likes to play with what's next, Google AI Studio is like their little free lab where you can go do that.
hmm
And it's absolutely worth your time to check it out and just try some things. And what's on there changes from time to time.
Yeah, and from the little we've seen of Logan's tweets, it looks like they're going through a big redesign. So there'll be a lot of exciting stuff coming soon.
And on that note, let's get on over to the interview. Well, today we have an extra special guest. We're going to be joined by Logan Kilpatrick of Google DeepMind. Logan is the lead product manager on Google AI Studio and Gemini API. And some of today's episode might be a bit more technical than what we usually talk about, but hang in there because there's a lot of really, really great stuff to learn about some awesome tools that are coming out of Google DeepMind right now. So, Logan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. Long time reader and listener. So this will be fun. I'm excited.
Excellent. Well, we actually demoed AI Studio a couple weeks ago on our show and built 3 apps with it. But honestly, felt like we were just barely scratching the surface because, it's a podcast. We're trying to see what we can do live in 1 hour and make happen. How do you personally use AI Studio? Like, what's your go-to workflow when you want to build something?
Yeah. This we were talking right before this off camera about sort of the transitionary period that AI Studio is going through, and so we have a traditional playground experience where folks can sort of experience the models and see what they're capable of, and the whole point is to sort of help you as a developer or an AI builder build an intuition and a mental model of like what are the Gemini models, and actually more broadly than just Gemini, VO, Imagine, what are Google's models capable of doing. And I think the builder 1.0 era was the way to do that, was in this playground type of environment. I think we've actually moved on beyond that now, where now people are testing the models in different ways. And that's why I think around IO this year, or even it might have been even before that, we released this this build tab on the left hand side of AI Studio where you can go in and actually have the model build you an entire app. And for a lot of the things, it'll build you an app that's in some way powered by Gemini, which is actually really cool. And so I spent a lot of my time, again, we're in this weird transitory period where I know how the product is going to evolve. So I'm using the current
Right.
product, and it's hard because I'm like, I want the future version so badly. So I have to pull myself out of using it too much. But it tends to be this prototyping of AI experiences is how I spend most of my time. It's wouldn't it be cool if you could do this thing with AI in a product? And AI Studio is awesome because like I can just put in a really simple prompt and it just like is connected to my Gemini API keys and it's connected to Gemini and all of our other models by default out of the box. So it makes that iteration loop and process much more simple. I don't need to worry about like what's the right code snippet to call Gemini or whatever. It's just like
Yeah.
baked
Right.
in. And I think we're really going to lean into that and double down on that. And there's so much more that we can do. So it'll be awesome to see how folks feel about it.
It will be.
Yeah,
I love
definitely.
the deploy button. That's a thing that I feel like a lot of other tools have missed, is the ability to actually send it out
Yeah,
and use it.
This is one of the cool things for us about like I know we don't talk about this a ton, but AI Studio as a product is built on all of the Google Cloud infrastructure. So Deploy, as an example, is using Cloud Run. Behind the scenes, the APIs are using Cloud Projects. We're using Cloud Billing. We're using the Cloud API key system. So it's like all of these subtle ways in which we can slowly start to expose to users the complexity, and AI builders and developers, the complexity of actually building like a full stack app without having to
Yeah.
sort of, there's obviously lots of complexity of what you could build. And how do you do that in like a really incremental way so that you don't kind of scare people away with the complexity? And I think a lot of cases, there's so much to do as a developer that it's easy to get scared away. So Deploy is a great example of like slowly getting people to form a worldview of like what they could be doing or what they should be doing. And yeah, Cloud Run is awesome because it takes care of a bunch of the complexity for us as product
Yeah.
builders, and we don't need to solve all the edge cases that Cloud Run has solved, which is awesome.
Yeah, you completely won me over with the build tool. Like when I first tried that out, and then the fact that I could go in there and actually set up an AI powered app this in AI Studio, I was
Grant, I don't
mind-blown.
know
It
if
was
people, people tell me this and I can't tell if I'm getting gaslit or not because I'm like, I know it definitely works well. But I get all of these like random emails being like, this tool works so much better than everything I've ever tried. And I'm like, we're really not actually doing anything that complicated right now. I think we've got like a really ambitious roadmap and a future version of what we want. So it is interesting that people are getting value today despite how early we are in that process. And I think it gives me more conviction that like as we actually land this next few months of roadmap, people are going to be blown away with what we're able to do and build. And hopefully we'll be sitting here again in a few months and you'll be saying the same thing, but you'll be 10 times as excited as you are right now.
Yeah. No, I love to hear it. I love to hear it. So
Same.
for me, right, for example, I'm dabbling in video game design as a hobby right now. And one of my go-to video game tools is the open source engine Godot. And so game design with AI is one of the areas that I'm pretty excited about. And I noticed in your recent Developer Notes podcast that you mentioned vibe coding games in AI Studio. How do you envision a game designer actually using AI Studio? Like what is that workflow? Because when we tested it, we did like the little, you could create a generative story, kind of like a text-based game. Where is that just scratching the surface? Like what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we're definitely early in that domain. And so for folks who didn't hear that episode, I think this is the one you're talking
Mhm.
about with Demis.
Mhm.
And we were talking about this specifically through the lens of Genie, which is our new world model. And if
Right.
folks haven't seen this, just go search online for Genie 3 and you'll see some of the videos and it will blow your mind. But essentially fully functional world models that have like temporal consistency where you can make edits to the world, and as you move around and go back to the places you were before, as you'd expect. And this is perhaps pretty intuitive for people who are thinking about the video game analogy, but like as you move around a video game, it's deterministic. The files are saved on your computer, etc. So as you go back somewhere that you've been before, you assume everything looks the same. World models do not function like that normally
Right.
because it is actually on the fly generating the actual ecosystem. It's not, there's no like file somewhere that is being referenced from an asset perspective, which is what video game designers would normally do. So there's this whole new paradigm of like what you could potentially build and how you would potentially build. We're definitely probably as early innings as possible of like that like Genie world model version of what's possible.
Right.
But even still, I think there's like lots of cool stuff happening in like the AI gaming space where people are using I talk to folks all the time. People are using AI to like build smart teammates and assistants as one use case and example. I see people doing this with like AI powered NPCs, which is really cool.
Right.
you can also just, if you've never built video games before, and as somebody who is like dabbled in building video games, it's always the like CS 101 problem that I think lots of people are super excited about. And it's like, you think you're going to go and learn CS so that you can make games. And then you start making games, you realize like, this is really difficult and really hard. And like, maybe I
100%.
don't want to make games. I have this, me and my little brother have this conversation all the time, because like he really, he studied computer science and everything because he wanted to make games. And as he started making games, realized like, it's actually not that much fun. So I am optimistic for the world where AI is this interface that like lets people create who want to create, and specifically video games is like one example of the sort of outcome you'd want. But we're definitely early stages of that story.
Yeah, that's fair. Another gaming related thing was Kaggle Game Arena that DeepMind just launched. And that's wild because, that's where AI models compete in chess or Go or poker, and you can actually watch them, right?
It's super cool. I think Game Arena, and all credit to the Kaggle team, and obviously DeepMind's been collaborating with them on this, but they sort of built the infrastructure to do this and put together the arena and everything like that. And it's a great example of this through a couple of different dimensions. The goal for Game Arena, one, it's just like cool to see models play games, and there was lots of people like Magnus Carlsen and others sort of commentating and watching all the chess games specifically that were happening, which is cool.
Yeah.
So there's definitely an entertainment value of it, but two, there's this thread around evals, and for folks who haven't built or aren't following this closely, like the challenge with evals right now is the saturation happens so quickly. You like, even humanity's last exam, which I'll not talk deeply about like what it's actually testing, but was designed to be a really rigorous and difficult eval that it would take a long time in order to actually have models solve. And I think already today it's like you're seeing models jump from like 0 or 1% to 40 or 50% on the order of single digit numbers of months.
It has an expiration date, doesn't it?
Yeah, all evals have this expiration date.
Yeah.
And that's actually what's interesting about these online arena type of evals, which is what you're actually comparing is like models versus one another. So as the model progress continues, you actually, the puck is always moving. So relative to static evals, it becomes really hard. Eventually you'd imagine that some of the arenas would saturate, and there's not really, you'd get to this like global optima where the models don't actually it's not interesting anymore. But I think they have a much longer lifespan than sort of static evals. So there's something really cool there. It's also meant to show, and this was part of the conversation with Demis. I don't know if this part was on camera or not, but we were talking off camera, and it was about people talk a lot about like how close we are to AGI and all this other stuff. And obviously there's been like incredible amount of progress on the model side, and they're all getting smart and things like that. But then you look at these examples where with domain specific systems and with humans, we're really easily able to generalize across all these different games. And you look at the models, and like the models can't follow the basic instructions of chess. Like the models want to make all these illegal moves. They want to do all this stuff that just like isn't how to actually play the game, and is a good reminder that like we're obviously making progress, but we're not at AGI yet. And there's this like jagged intelligence paradigm where like the models are really can generate the code for Minecraft, or something that looks or feels like Minecraft, and yet at the same time can't follow the basic instructions of chess, which I could probably teach a 12-year-old who's made it through some years of school how to play chess in probably 30 minutes, and they'd be able to pick it up. So it is fascinating to see that model behavior play out in that way.
Do you think that watching their or I guess like training them with that in mind, or watching them compete against each other can help with like help them generalize across other domains too, like in the agent space? Like, how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, this is definitely part of my like joke is everything comes back to instruction following. So if you can just make the model better at instruction following, it can do anything. And like chess is a good example of that. Like technically, if you were to just make the model good at instruction following, you should be able to give it really, really good instructions, and it should be able to go in and generalize from that. The reality is like it's not that clear. And to answer the question specifically, like it's an open research question, like how much does making the models better at these games actually generalize to other capabilities? Hopefully it does. And you could imagine this is part of the original like DeepMind thesis is you teach the models a bunch of stuff about all these different environments and the reinforcement learning environments, and you can make them really good at domain specific tasks. And then ideally you learn a bunch of capabilities that generalize across a bunch of different stuff. That is turned out to be like somewhat true in certain areas, and like maybe will end up being more true over time. But it's not like a clear slam dunk. Like you could make, and there's lots of good examples of this, like actually making an AI system, non-LLM frontier model that can play all these games was a problem that was solved probably like 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm.
And yet at that time, there was nothing like LLMs. They didn't have this general purpose intelligence. It wasn't actually that useful. Like making something by default that is good at playing games doesn't end up being like beneficial for most people.
Right.
But making something that's really smart and good at things that can also play games, hopefully will be the way. And I think of like LLMs as this like delivery mechanism for intelligence that like hopefully continue to generalize across all these different domains.
On the coding side, it seems like a lot of the big AI labs are focusing on agents that can understand large code bases. How would a developer use AI Studio and maybe Gemini CLI differently than just prompting normally? And what's the advantage of the studio environment?
I think for so we're not like I was just in a meeting, we were talking about this. One of the explicit things with AI Studio is like we're not trying to solve every problem. So like really there are great tools that are out there in the ecosystem, some of which are made by Google, like Gemini CLI, some of which are made by the rest of the ecosystem. And really the sweet spot of what we can do in AI Studio is sort of get you a feel for what the models are capable of. Hopefully with all the vibe coding stuff we're doing and with build mode, get you a working prototype and then go and get you out into like a full-fledged sort of professional developer product. And that could be your IDE of choice, your CLI of choice, etc.
Right.
And I think that's where the like one of those user journeys is that people care a lot about. I think the one you're describing of like large code bases that already exist, this is actually one of the even more complex problems that AI has to solve.
It is.
Yeah.
Because that like text to prompt use case actually works pretty well. The problem with the large code bases, if folks haven't had to experience this before, is like there's just lots of like context buried in a bunch of different places, and it's really difficult to sort of orchestrate this together. And this is like a very human problem. Like I feel this way sometimes in some of Google's code bases because they're large and there's lots of teams contributing to them. And as you sort of try to form an intuition of how these different pieces of software are connected together, it's actually not easy to do that. And
Right.
that goes to this like emergent sort of framing of the problem around context engineering, where people are trying to build systems. It's not based on the user prompt. It's not like trying to do a bunch of optimization based on the user prompt. It's trying to do a bunch of optimization on like getting the relevant data to actually help answer the user prompt. And I think that's the large code base stuff, like some of the most, insert again your favorite AI coding tool. This is some of the sweet spot and the magic of what they've figured out is like how to actually go and get the right context to answer questions and use all these like more traditional code understanding tools like graph techniques and things like that to understand the relationship between different parts of a code base. And I think that's actually working pretty well. Like I could imagine that continuing to scale up and sort of be good enough for even the most large code bases to work really well with these tools.
And I mean, coding is not the only thing that you can do in AI Studio, because you can also test out, like, for example, like you can do the screen sharing with voice interactions for real-time assistance, which that is really cool, and something that, not every tool gives you the option to do. Another one would be, you can build, you can stream, and you can build talking apps that you can actually talk to. That's pretty interesting as well. So there's a lot of things like besides just like I can't imagine that where it goes from here is it's going to get even more exciting, but it ranges the gamut of what you can do, which is quite cool.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think this is the is part of the challenge for us from a product perspective is we do have this huge breadth of what you can do now, from like actually writing code and building a bespoke app to like we have you mentioned the live API stuff, the stream real time mode, and being able to build interactive sort of co-present AI experiences that don't just see text, but they can understand the audio that you're saying. You can actually share your screen, and back to this like context engineering problem. What makes using AI products so hard in many ways is that you have to do, in most products, you have to do the context engineering yourself. And this is actually one of the like breakthrough product experience things that a lot of these IDEs have done that like has made this helpful, is that actually all the context, most, or if not all the context, most of the context you need is in your IDE somewhere. So if you can just traverse through what's in your IDE, you will eventually get all the right context to theoretically solve the problem that you have at hand. That's actually not true in most products. Like the scope of, if I'm trying to solve some like, I need to email someone and book a trip and do whatever, et cetera, the context is spread across potentially the entire internet or some like unbounded state space that I by default don't actually know. And what's cool about the live API and stream real time is basically all this context you need to solve the problem is in some case visible on my screen in some way. Like throughout the day, all the context for me to do my job, however many hours a day, shows up on my computer screen. The AI system doesn't need some other, access to some other tools. Like all the context is there. It is connected to my computer. It's already present. So there's something really interesting about building infrastructure to do this. And I think we're still early in like allowing and like building a bunch of products that make use of that. But I'm excited. And then the other use case you mentioned was around text to speech. And we have a state-of-the-art model for text-to-speech, and it's really cool to see. There's been a huge amount of demand, and wasn't a use case that I thought would be like particularly would like grow particularly quickly, but it actually is, which has been really interesting to see. There's like a huge amount of demand for like very native audio sounding or like native human sounding text-to-speech video generation. So you can go into AI Studio and you can test this capability out, and things like if folks have used Notebook LM, you could do these like podcast like generations, which is really cool. And there's lots of other use cases like that.
That's awesome. Cool. So you can make your own AI podcast in AI Studio?
Exactly. You could make your own AI podcast
in your voice. Yeah.
In your own voice, which is awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, and you can use this is part of the like there's actually not a big gap between being able to do that and what Notebook LM is doing, which is interesting. Like what I think people fail to realize about the Notebook LM story is that really I think the audio piece was important, and that's why we've externalized the audio piece with what we have right now. Through the Gemini API, and it's like our text-to-speech models. But actually the thing that people were most compelled by was like the humanness of the scripts in Notebook LM. And the human scripts were just written by Gemini. There's no, it's like literally prompting. It's prompt engineering and all that stuff. Like there was no like secret sauce of what was happening. Truly somebody
no fancy magic, no nothing. It was the right ingredients. Notebook LM was, I would say, the first Google AI product that I like heard about organically from other people. Like that was the one that people who didn't use AI at work were like, hey, have you seen this thing? This is really cool. And they were right. It is really cool.
It is, yeah. And what I've loved also is that they've been able to bring a bunch of the things of what folks love about Notebook LM to other products. So like the Gemini app now, like you can use deep research and then you can create an audio overview, which is the podcast experience that folks loved about Notebook LM based on a deep research report that's, 40 or 50 pages long. So there is this really cool and Notebook LM is part of Google Labs, and Google Labs' mission is to build all these like frontier experiences and like help make that technology more ubiquitous across the rest of Google. So I think it's worked really, really well in the case of Notebook LM, which is cool.
Yeah, I want everything to talk to me now. It's 2025 that it's taken this long for all of the internet to reach a point where it can talk so well and like read the news to me. It can like I use it with scientific papers and academic papers and such. Like I'll be working or I'll be driving and I love to just throw it in, hit the button, and I can listen to it and get what I really need from it so easily. It's a big winner.
Yeah, the driving use case is very pertinent. I don't commute to the office, but I have been traveling a bunch, and like I don't want to use my phone while I'm in a car on the way to the airport or something like that. And it's being able to just like turn whatever I was trying to grapple with through Notebook LM or the Gemini app into an audio overview is so helpful. It is
Oh,
this
it
like,
is.
and but I think this goes to like why having these natively multimodal models is so helpful, because like you get, the reality is the bet on multimodal from a Gemini perspective is like life is multimodal. Being
Yeah.
able to understand and talk and all of these things, the world around you is just like such a critical part of the path to AGI. So it's yeah, I love seeing the bets actually pay off from a product experience standpoint when the model ends up working really well for them.
Are you at the point where you feel comfortable like talking with AI in public and or when coding?
Yeah, when coding, I think is actually a really good example of this. I'm actually not somebody who spends a bunch of time talking to AI. I don't,
I'm
this is
more of a
probably
text person myself.
say it
So,
again.
sorry to cut you off. I'm more of a text person myself as well, where I'd
Yeah,
rather
yeah.
text with it, you know? Yeah.
I don't, as interesting as it is, like what the thing that is most useful to me that I get excited about is like building stuff for other people. I don't get a lot of like, gratification or value out of talking to AI. And I think this is also just like um this is, I'm probably in some weird privileged position, but I'm like I work with and I spend my time around people who I think are just so incredible that it's like, yeah, the AI models are good, but like I want the person who's like actually the best at this, and like I could go find that person and actually just directly ask them. So it makes it harder to do that. But I think about like me, you know 8 years ago learning to code in C++ and like having a horrible experience doing that. And like I didn't have the person around me all the time who I could like, who would
Yeah.
actually help me do the thing I needed to do, which is figure out how to code. And like having an AI tutor that could help me do that would have been like so valuable, and not spent my time, getting yelled at on Stack Overflow or whatever, which was also
I
a
use it
good,
for I use it for problem solving and thinking through an idea. When I have like something that's in my head
Yeah.
and I want to think through a process, maybe I'm writing something or maybe I'm kind of figuring out what a project's going to look like and I haven't decided yet how I want to structure it. A lot of times I'll do that, and often while I'm driving or while I'm on a walk or while I'm doing something else. And when I get back, I'll be like, give me a summary of that I can take and work from. And it's really good about making me kind of consider it outside of the box. Sometimes just saying a thing out loud is enough to really be a difference maker. For me, I love it. And I know it's a thing so few people use, and I'm like, you guys are missing out.
I think if folks haven't done this before, my takeaway, and I'm curious what your experience was like, but you need a few good examples of the model coming up with an idea that you wouldn't have thought would be helpful, and then it kind of clicks. Like I've done this, like
Yeah.
historically, I was like kind of like I trust my human ideation process, and I would intentionally not use AI to do it because I was like, I actually have different and perhaps in some contexts more useful priors than AI systems, which are broadly trained on like lots
Yeah.
of human knowledge.
Totally.
And then I've used the tools, and then I would get some like really interesting novel idea that I wouldn't have come up with myself. And it's given me more respect over time for like the need to actually pull these tools into the process. I think the challenge is this how intentional you have to be about using the tools right now. Like
Yeah.
I think like ideally I just do my ideation process the way that works best for me, and the sort of the AI layer is happening seamlessly, omnipresent, and enriching whatever my ideas are. I think today it requires like a user to like go out and be intentional about that. And I think we'll move out of that space, probably within the next couple of years, of like you having to be intentional about bringing AI in the loop versus like it just being there and supporting you, which is interesting.
Well, some other potentially more niche use cases that are kind of interesting. So, legal professionals are either extremely cautious about AI, or they're not even checking the cases referenced in an AI output before they go to make an argument in court. Um, So how would someone like that, where they're like saying like, hey, like I'm maybe not coding, but I need it for a very specific use case. How could they use AI Studio and Gemini and how would you advise someone in not in a legal setting, but just like for a niche
Yeah.
use case
Yeah.
like that, you know?
Yeah, one, you should definitely make sure that your law firm allows usage of these tools. I have maybe a slightly different perspective, which um, I I talked to the CEO of Casetext, which was
Mhm.
one of the early sort of successful GPT based products, and they had early access, and they did a bunch of stuff. They ended up selling their company to Thomson Reuters, which is
Mm.
like a massive legal firm. If folks have done legal stuff in the past, and in that conversation with Jake, talking about like the actually how ubiquitous the penetration of AI is in the law in legal today, which was really interesting and not like my what would have been my conventional wisdom default assumption.
Right.
But Thomson Reuters ran a bunch of, I think it was them or one of their partners ran some studies, and it was like 99% of lawyers had tried Gemini, Claude, or ChatGPT, which is
Wow.
crazy. And I'm sure there's like probably some bias sampling. I'd assume the like absolute number is probably slightly lower than that. Um, but even in a small subset of people, like it's incredible to see how much usage they're getting. I think there's a bunch of reasons for that in the legal domain, like, access to, they have money to spend, their high potential ROI of like making operations go faster because they're, uh,
Digging through case law, stuff like that, that you can only remember so many. You can only process so many in a search. You can, yeah,
exactly. So I think it's one of those examples where like the use case is just like so mission critical to what those folks are doing that like it just becomes easy to buy in.
yeah,
And yeah, I think like one of the biggest points of feedback from them in the conversation was just around like how much long context matters for this use case. And Gemini's obviously been at the bleeding edge of this with our 1 million token context window and 2 million. Um, and it's been interesting to see how much that still comes up as like a limitation for them, is they just want long context to bring more context and more documents and more information into the memory of the model. Um, so I think, and obviously we're still early in that domain, but I think it'll be cool to see how much people are accelerated when you like 10x the context window or 100x the context window and things like that in the future. Um, and it's very distinct from RAG in a lot of ways. Like I think if folks have gone into the weeds of, RAG versus long context, it really is it is a fundamental trade-off that you're making. So I'll be interested to see people not have to make that trade-off in cases
yeah.
where their use case would support it.
Do you think that that's something that's realistic near-term timeline? I mean, without giving away anything. What do you
Yeah,
think?
there's a bunch of like architectural challenges. Like LLMs in the current form are not designed to scale up to the 10 to 100 million token context window. Like it's really tough. Like you could do some hacks to sort of get slightly farther, and like we did show a bunch of like research of what it would look like to bring 10 million to people, and even with the original Gemini launch showed some of that in like practice and production environments. It becomes extremely like very, very, very costly, and like not easy to maintain and continue to scale up. So I do think we'll need some like architectural innovation at the model level in order to enable things like 100 million tokens, which I'm excited about, and I think the world needs. So I'm hopeful we'll keep pushing the rock up the hill.
100 million tokens. Man.
It's
Yeah,
gonna be
what's a
crazy.
100 million token use case?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, some of these code bases is actually a good example of like if you look at like a large company and if you're using a mono repo, really interesting to see like if you imagine like your assistant, um, like you probably at maybe 100 million tokens is like too much or is like slightly on the extreme of this, but like accumulated through your lifetime, you actually do have a lot of this data. I think the challenge then becomes like how do you and like the attention mechanism in language models, and transformers specifically doesn't have this intrinsically in it, but like how do you upsample the right data and downsample the wrong data, all that stuff. So I think you'll need these like human memory has this like interesting has all these interesting mechanisms to make sure like the stuff that's not useful is removed from your memory and the stuff that is useful is cemented, and then you build this sort of abstraction layer on top of like core ideas that you've had. I assume we'll get something closer to like what looks like memory, because then it decreases. Like you don't need 100 million. You probably need like 10 million with the system on top of it, and that's much more reasonable than 100 million.
Totally. That makes sense.
Food analysis is a thing that really interests me. This the food analysis via image. It seems super practical. And how does this work? Is this just simply take a photo of your lunch and get detailed nutritional information from that photo?
Yeah, this depends probably a little bit on like the use case. You could definitely do something like that. I would suggest folks to like try to do some validation as far as like how accurate that is. And I imagine there's cases where it works really well, and there's probably like foods, like different food genres or categories or different examples where it does not work well.
Yeah.
So this is where having making it easy for people to build evals and benchmarks is really important. And
Yeah.
I'd love to see like your personal eval of different food understanding use cases. But yeah, I do think I've thought about this for a while. If you've ever like tried to use one of those apps to like track what you're eating, it's a
Yeah.
huge pain in the ass. I'm like,
Yeah.
I envy people who are going on that journey and that mission, because it's such a pain to have to like keep track of everything, and being able to just snap a picture and have the model deeply understand, and use things like bounding boxes, and it can do like the size, proportional understanding of size and all the like nuanced details, has just never been possible without language models that have like a deep vision capability. And I think that's something that actually works right now, and is a good example of like the model capability has actually in some cases like outpaced the ability for us to build products around the model, and the ability of people to like wrap their head around the understanding of the model can actually do that. Like if you were to go and ask, 100 million random Americans, does a product like that exist? Can AI models do this, et cetera? Like I would assume the vast majority would say it's not possible. And the reality is it works right now today. Like you can go download an app that does that, or build an app yourself, even better, that
Yeah.
does that.
I'm guessing it would probably, where you'd hit limitations would be with things like it not being able to recognize the difference in maybe almond milk and dairy milk,
No, I
or
think it could do that. I think it could do that.
no
I
joke.
mean, in a cup without the packaging, it wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
In containers, I mean, the models can read the text extremely well, like superhuman ability to read that text. I think you'd be able to do that right now. So I'm curious. I have
Nice.
almond milk and regular milk in my fridge. I'll go test after this, but I'm almost positive it'll be able to pick up on it.
That's
Awesome.
awesome. Well, I am
Awesome.
actually doing that journey right now. I'm using an app to track my calories, and it takes a lot of mental effort every day to put it in. And I was thinking, like, man, if I could just go make a micro app version of this, and then I also read that it's really good to instead of just walking 30 minutes every day, to actually switch every 3 minutes between regular walking and fast walking. And I was like, there's no reason with today's AI tools that I couldn't make myself a micro app to do both of those things for me, like right now.
Do it in AI
And
Studio, Grant. Do it in AI Studio, and let me know if it doesn't work, and send the feedback of whatever doesn't. But I have to imagine this is like super achievable, single prompt, and it works out of the box.
yeah, I think so too. I will spin it up, and I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, I think the thing we're missing right now in AI Studio for the like keeping track of what you eat example is we don't have like persistent database support right now, which is what you would want. So you'd want to store it over time and then build a bunch of infrastructure to retrieve that context where it's useful. So we're working on that. I think that will make that use case. It will like the demo will work really well. You could do it for like a bunch of stuff in a single like browser session, but as soon as you refresh, it's gonna
You're gonna lose it.
yeah, you're going to potentially lose that stuff. So we'll solve that problem. But I think the technology should like exist. The models can do it for you, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That is so
Well,
cool.
Google also has a lot of different other tools. Like you have Firebase Studio, you have some other ones, Jules, Colab. I mean, Firebase Studio in theory could do the database portion of that. No.
Yeah, it should be able to. I think that's one of the cool things about Firebases and Firebase Studios. You get the sort of batteries included with compute and storage, etc. So that should just work out of the box. And they also have a bunch of Gemini integrations, so you should be able to like get it to do sort of image understanding with Gemini through Firebase, get a database, all that stuff.
Well, Google's been releasing a lot in the even the Gemma family. I think it's over 100 million downloads now. How does the open source strategy fit with AI Studio? Can people access those Gemma models within the platform? And what's the thinking behind the difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what ends up happening with Gemma is um, sort of it's an acknowledgement in a couple of ways. Like one, obviously open source and open models are good for the ecosystem. So it's great for Google to participate, and Google's done a ton of stuff in open source for many, many years. I think the Gemma story is also an acknowledgement of it's us meeting developers and customers where they are. And there's a ton of ecosystems where like you either need to have the level of model customization that open source provides, or the stability of like long-term deployments. Like I was emailing with a customer over the weekend, and they were saying how they basically need more than 6 months to get a model approved to actually put it into production, because they're in a regulated industry. And at the pace of what ends up happening with the Gemini models, it ends up being difficult for them to like use Gemini in production, because like we have so many models, and then the old models get deprecated and new ones come out and all this stuff. And like the
Yeah.
pace of innovation that's happening actually makes adopting AI difficult. And that's where Gemma is like a great example of like, you can take the models, you can put them on a server somewhere, you can deploy them, and you can own that yourself long term, and sort of take ownership in the journey of like how you migrate between different AI models that are coming. So I think there's something interesting there. There's two other angles. One of them is I think people also just want to have this like customization story, and there's like a few good examples of this. Like we did Dolphin Gemma, and Dolphin Gemma is like trained on a bunch of dolphin data and sort of helps understand some of the stuff that's happening, that the like actions that dolphins are taking, which is like kind of a funny example, but also like interesting of the level of customization that you can do. MedGemma is another one where there's like a huge amount of interest in the medical space, and obviously OpenAI is making a bunch of noise about that with GPT-5 and the stuff that they're doing. So like it's clearly an
Yeah.
example that I think they said it was like one of the highest traction query use cases in ChatGPT was this medical use case. And I think, I talk to
Yeah.
customers all the time who are blown away with MedGemma, and MedGemini, actually the sort of Gemini variant of it. So it's been super cool to see those use cases also get love by being able to like build these custom open source models. And it
Yeah.
usually ends up being that the open source models are like 6 months behind the proprietary models for Google at least. Yeah, but it's all the same innovation that ends up being in there. It's like we, make hill climb on multimodal or long context or reasoning or something like that, and then it all feeds back into the open model ecosystem.
What are you most excited about right now in the AI space? Like, where do you think all this is headed? Not necessarily, giving away Google's secret sauce or anything, but just as someone who's been in this space through your OpenAI days and now at Google DeepMind and watching it expand and grow, what gets you excited?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think probably vibe coding. And the reason I say that is I think as someone who's like gone through the pain of learning how to build software, the reality is it's everyone isn't going to learn how to build software. But the cool thing, and like actually vibe coding is just one of these examples where like AI is like the rising tide that lifts all boats. And we see this, and that's why I think some of the like broad conversations about the negative, I think there are very real potential negative impacts of AI for people, but I think it's just so incredible and exciting to see this like continued trend of the tide lifting all the ships. And I think vibe coding is one of those examples. I think there's something interesting about this medical use case, which is really great. I think there's like the tutoring use case, which is really great. There's all these examples where consistently the model is making it so that something that was reserved for a small group of people is now able to be done by a much larger group of people. And the direct outcome of that is like hopefully a benefit to humanity. And I think there's, um,
I agree.
yeah, it's fun to see the vibe coding example because I love building software, and I think it's like a great force for economic prosperity and all that stuff. And I'm hopeful we'll see other examples like this where something that is super high economic value to the world can be done by more people. And at the same time, this is the very interesting dovetail is like at the same time that more people are able to do it, the value of the expertise actually isn't diminished and it's further increased. And I think that's the missing part of this like vibe coding developer story, which is like just because you can vibe code doesn't make it so that developers aren't important. Actually, the amount of software in the world is going to be 1,000,000x what it is right now in 10 years. And who do you think is going to be fixing and maintaining all that software? Yeah, there'll be AI in there and there'll be agents in there, but there'll also be a lot of human developers who are sort of orchestrating these tools and like making sure that there's actual value creation happening. So I'm just incredibly bullish on this like market expansionary force that AI has, and also just creating all these new markets that didn't exist before. It's incredible to see.
If someone listening has never touched AI Studio, what's the first thing that they should use it to build?
Clone your favorite website. I feel like as a use case I do all the time. So I take a screenshot of AI Studio, and when I'm ideating on like what does the next generation of our product look like, I literally just take a screenshot of AI Studio, put it back in AI Studio, and I say clone this, and it remakes it. And then I have this sort of canvas to reimagine what the product could be. So I think it's a magical use case.
I like that. That's cool.
What an
I don't know
awesome
what this
answer.
says about me, and that you can read into this all you want, but my go-to is always remake MySpace. So I guess MySpace is
Interesting.
my favorite website, which I didn't realize.
Yeah,
Bring
that
back
is a subtle
MySpace.
tell.
Yeah. But what would you say is the most underrated feature of AI Studio that like knowledge workers, for example, who aren't developers, but what are they missing from not using it?
Yeah, I think maybe the knowledge worker persona probably should be in the Gemini app. So we're definitely building AI Studio for more of like the AI builder audience.
Right.
But I still think like deep research is a great example of like people don't understand. My dad texted me over the weekend and was like, hey, he was sending me some article and was like, hey, does Gemini have this like deep research functionality? I'm like, yes, we actually invented deep research. Um, and it's just a mind-blowing experience. If folks haven't tried deep research before in the Gemini app, you can ask your like a really simple query and the model will go visit, between tens and hundreds or even thousands of different web pages in order to help answer the question and then like show you this proof of work and citations and all this stuff. So it's a mind-blowing experience and is a great example of
It
like
is.
what AI products should feel like. So that's definitely the like my knowledge worker best use case.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, it's gotten a lot better too since the first version came out that yes, Google invented. We remember
Yep.
because we covered it. It's so funny. It's like, yeah, people only use, or they don't only use OpenAI, but they think of it with OpenAI now because OpenAI sort of like took that and ran with it.
Yeah,
The
100%.
AI space has a lot of that.
It does have
That's
a lot of
true.
that. That's
I
why
Yeah.
joke, just really make business coverage more interesting.
yeah, I think that's why
Yeah.
telling the story is also really interesting because it is I think there's something fascinating about that. It's like how much of the even in AI, how much of the human experience is just storytelling is fascinating.
Yeah, I look forward
Totally.
to watching this era's Pirates of Silicon Valley. If you remember the movie about Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and I think there will be a lot of interesting stories to tell 20 years from now about this stretch of time we're both in and entering. Well, Logan, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. It's an honor to have you on the Neuron and to get to talk to you about the great products you guys are putting out.
Yeah, this was a ton of
Yeah.
fun. Thank you for having me, and it was fun to ideate on a bunch of stuff, and hopefully, as the sort of vibe coding experience in AI Studio materializes, we'll be able to help you both do even more and send me suggestions and feedback. I would love to keep making the product better for y'all.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
And keep up
Absolutely.
the fire tweets. Every time you have one, I'm like, let's see it. Let's go.
Let's see it.
I appreciate it.
That was a great interview. A lot of fun chatting with Logan today, learning about what Google's doing now and maybe what all's around the corner, and just kind of seeing more of the big picture of the the Google AI plan, even I would say, not just limited to Studio. And I think we're going to see a lot more good things as time goes. Don't you, Grant?
Yeah, 100%. I'm really bullish on Google right now.
Yeah, they've got a lot going on, and they seem to, after a rough rollout in the AI space, they've really kind of come together and started putting out some big winners.
Yeah, I mean, I say this a lot in the newsletter, but Google was always the one to beat in AI.
Yes.
OpenAI was founded basically to make sure that Google was not a AI monopoly, and so far they've done a good job of succeeding at that. There's now 5 major AI labs that are
Yeah,
competing
there's
directly
5.
with
That's
Google.
crazy.
But I still think it's Google's to win. I know it's kind of a controversial opinion,
Yeah.
but I truly do believe that it's Google's race to lose. Let's put it that way. They started further behind, but they were already ahead. But back in 2016. So I think at this point, it's just like, let's see if they can overcome the bureaucracy, and get really smart people like Logan and Demis, and
Yeah.
let them push through and create something really epic.
Well, and to me, the smartest pivot I've seen in their system was like they really started out very consumer driven. It was Gemini. Let's get these models out. And I mean, I guess you've got to have the models to continue building out the other things. But
Sure.
while OpenAI has a really strong hold on the consumer market, I mean, Google is growing in other areas. Like in the end, I don't even know that there has to be a winner and a loser. I feel like this is going to be a big space. It's going to
Oh
continue
yeah.
to be a big space. And the fact is, we're probably going to find, and I hope we do find that there's room for several companies. Because nobody wants the monopoly situation. But I do believe that really, and not just them, anyone. You don't want any one company controlling all of the AI space.
It's true.
And,
It's true.
I think, I think there's still an awful lot of room to grow for, years and years to come, and, they're all hanging in there right now, so
Yeah.
we'll see where it goes.
I would say the framing with which I said it's Google's race to win or lose is based on the framing of AGI being this like takeoff a moment where, all of a sudden some lab has the AGI internally and then they can
Mhm.
just continuously self-improve forever.
Yeah.
I think the jury's still out on whether or not that's going to happen anytime soon. But interestingly, I just recently saw Francois Chollet and Dorkesh Patel talking about their AGI timelines when they released the launch of the ARC AGI 3 prize, which for anyone who doesn't know, ARC AGI 3 is basically like the next iteration of the ARC prize to try and prove that, AGI is possible and that these
Yeah.
models aren't just like memorizing things and they're actually generalizing and learning across, large
Multiple
span.
disciplines and yeah.
Exactly. And this one's all games focused, which goes back to our conversation with Logan about gaming and his conversation with Demis on the Google podcast I reference. We'll include a link to that.
Yeah.
And they basically are saying, Francois, he's like a major AI skeptic, just because he thinks, they're not actually generalizing, or at least they haven't up until this point. He's now changed his time frame to be within 5 years. So
Oh, wow.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really interesting because we talk about it an awful lot less, and people who were skeptics who have kind of suddenly leaned in, and you've got people who are really close who you wouldn't have been shocked if they said tomorrow, who've maybe leaned back just a little bit. So I'm guessing what we're going to look at here is, my money's been on like 2027 ish for a minute, but we'll see. And like you said, it may not even happen. And it may be that some of these people are bright and it's actually kind of irrelevant because it's it's good enough. It's doing most all of the things. I mean, are we chasing perfection or are we, I mean, obviously we are over the long term, but,
Uh,
we'll just have to see where it lands and how that goes forward.
Yeah,
But on that
definitely.
note, how about a round robin question for this week? If you had to predict what will AI development look like for the average knowledge worker in 2026? Will all be prompt engineers? Will all be managing teams of agents, managing teams of agents? Do you think the tools will be invisible and we'll just be talking to our computers via some kind of voice interface? What do you see?
This is interesting. So I think this is all dependent on what the dominant UX, and by UX I mean user experience, is, and what
Mhm.
it becomes over the next couple months. So are you thinking 2026 just like broadly, like over the course of the year? So like,
Over the course of the year, not like
yeah,
January 1, because we're 5 months out from January 1. So I'll let's say, this time next year, a year from now,
okay,
mid
so August
2026.
2026.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of room to run in terms of creating a more optimal or a better AI user experience between now and 2026, August 2026. And so if I had to guess what that form factor is, I think it'd be a lot more voice and talking and a lot less hard formatting structured prompts is my
Yeah.
guess. 100%. I think that part of the process is going to get abstracted away as much as possible. And by that I mean it goes to the back end. The engineers are doing it so that you, the user, as a regular knowledge worker, don't have to think about, ooh, I got to make sure that I give it my task and my goal, and I have to structure it in a certain way. And it's better if I put, my goal first versus my context first versus when do I put things in the order. I think that gets abstracted away as much as possible, unless the
Yeah.
model architecture changes a lot. And so then it'll just be you, Corey, basically saying, "What's up? This is what I'm trying to do. What do you need from me to do it?" Or the AI even prompts you, says like, "What are you trying to do today, Corey? And here's what I need from you in order to do it," and makes it a lot simpler.
I
What about
like
you?
that. I I I'm very, very similar. I would say that really structured prompting is going to be a thing left for building agents. And mostly I say that because, with agents, you want really repeatable results. You're looking for a task that's done over and over in a similar way.
Mhm.
And I think that for that purpose, that style of prompting is fine. I will say that I've noticed even with GPT-5 and the little bit of time we've had access to it, I can just throw slop garbage in a chat window now. It does not have to be structured, grammatically correct. I even playing with image gen models lately, like I've been playing with Flux locally. And one of the things I noticed is like there are these sample prompts in there to get different styles of images when you start. And every one of them is just a nonstop line of words. There are no commas, there are no periods, there are no nothing. It's just like black and white image, Noir style, three-quarter view from the ground.
I think
Uh,
that's has a lot to do with how the images are labeled. Like if you look at, the data sets for how they train images, you're basically asking a human, or in certain cases an AI, to go in and describe all of the aspects of the image so that it's properly labeled, so that everything that is black and white, is labeled black and white. And so the model knows, okay, if you use the word black and white, I know what that looks like, and vice
yeah.
versa. So for image prompting, it makes perfect sense.
I I think more that there are no commas or natural breaks included is what threw me off, that it is
Right.
literally just a long string of words.
Word soup.
It is word soup, like you could grab any chunk and be reading nonsense if you didn't know what you were doing. So I say that because it impressed me, because what that means is it's still able to grab the context from that and know, oh, he means black and white, he means noir this, he means, he wants a clown in a tutu dancing around on top of a beach ball. Uh, that's not what I was generating images of, to be clear. But, now, with that said, on the end user side, like a typical knowledge worker sitting at a desk, person who's, spending their day in, Slack or Google Chat or Microsoft Teams or whatever your particular flavor of communication software is, I think it will be much like what you've said. I think, we'll get in the morning and we'll open up our AI of choice, whichever one that happens to be, and it really doesn't matter that much. It matters less every time a new model comes out, in my
Not at
opinion.
this stage, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah, we've
agree.
really reached a point where the basics are good to go. So, just pick your flavor and be happy with it. Um, but I picture coming in the morning and it being like, "Hey, here are the few things I'm supposed to give you every morning. I got this ready for you. I got this. You've got these meetings." Kind of a true sit down and have a 5-minute stand up with your with your personal assistant kind of thing to the morning, but with AI.
Mhm.
And I think then it'll be things like, oh, they talk to me. I'm going to take over this new task now that Bob has been handling. Okay, so I'll holler over here and say, hey, Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever. And it'll be like, hey, what's up, Corey? And from there, you'll say, like, I've got this new thing I have to do every morning right now. I need to be keeping a really close eye on the price of NVIDIA stock, for example. Can you make sure that I have it before market open every day? And that'll
And
be
then
that.
just sends it to you like the next
And then it's
morning.
just done. And I don't have to go in. I don't have to build an agent. I don't have to go and, set some timer and a schedule. It just knows what every morning means. I mean, it can come back and be like, you mean weekdays or 7 days a week, but I think it'll be much more done with either our voices or one or two simple questions
This is really
asked to us.
interesting. I think the thing that unlocks this is having an AI operating system. So I'm going to use Apple as an example because Apple, although they are very behind in AI, they can actually make a lot of progress and headway here. And the rumors that have leaked from the company basically suggest as much. So they're working on a new Siri that's supposed to come out in early 2026, spring 2026, might be summer, could be as late as
Yeah.
August or fall of next
Or
year.
December.
Or I mean, no, don't bet on timelines with them.
No, no.
But it's allegedly spring of 2026, and they're working on the series so that it works with app intents. So you could be using your phone or your MacBook, and you could ask Siri, this new Siri, hey Siri, can you get me, can you open Uber and order me a pizza through the Uber Eats app? And it will actually do it for you. Now that's
Yeah.
something that Apple can uniquely do because they have the operating system. They can, teach their AI to
Yeah.
open your app with app intents. They're featured to do this.
And
Put
make a
in all
call
the
even.
data. Yeah. And be able to do this. Can an OpenAI do this at this point? They can do it if it's like a staged environment that they control out in the cloud, like through ChatGPT agent, but that's not as convenient for everybody. The most convenient form factor will be an AI assisted operating system where it can actually just use everything locally on your computer for you. And I think
Over
that
under, how many companies would you say are working on one of those right now out of the AI labs? Let's say just out of, and I'm going to include Microsoft here as well. We got Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, X,
I think if they're not working on this, they are behind.
I think so
But
too.
I think a lot of them, like let's look at Claude and OpenAI, for example. They don't have the money or attention span to work on this right now because think about who
Correct.
they would be competing with if they were making their own
Yeah.
operating system.
And I'd say
Um,
it's not on Meta's radar either.
Meta, I think, is closer. I think Meta is. And I think they're working on it for their personal super intelligence for the glasses. So if you think
Yeah.
about the world that we just described, where you and I are working, yep, you got them on right there, where you and I are working and we're talking to our AI and the AI is doing things for us, Meta actually has the closest version of that with the super intelligence plan. I personally predicted that if they're able to do this, that means that there's less time you and me stuck staring at a screen on the computer and more time us doing work as we're living our lives, which not everyone
Yeah.
agrees with my read on that, and that the forces that be in corporate America will stop that from happening. But I think if everybody is doing it, then the expectation changes, and it's not like you have to be glued to your office chair in order to work, but that it's just like the expectation is the work is done. And
I don't think that's wrong. I think it might be a longer leash timeline. And the only reason I say that is because it's the truth. It's kind of happened now. Like, first off, we're both working from home, making this podcast right now.
Mhm.
Like, that was kind of crazy talk 25 years ago.
Correct.
And
5 years ago,
can,
actually
if I
3 years
need
ago,
to.
after COVID, when everyone wanted everyone to go back to the
Yeah.
office.
And I theoretically have the equipment and would be perfectly capable of right now traveling to Southern California and, sitting on a beach and doing my work from a lawn chair, let's say a beach chair. What are they? I don't even know the words. A chair on a beach, and I could do that right now. I could go sit on my back porch right now and do my job. I think the key will be, would it cut us loose from the laptop? I think getting away from the big screen is going to be a big step. And it might be some solution like combining AI with a Apple Vision Pro kind of thing where, you could do it from your couch. You could do it from anywhere where you just take a minute and throw your monitors up on the wall when you need to, once every hour or so, check in on Slack and make sure you're caught up with everybody or something, for
And by the
example.
way, Apple is working on this as well. They've
Yes.
waited till we covered this at one of my old newsletters. They waited. They're waiting until 2026, 2027 for battery life reasons, as
Yeah.
has been leaked.
I think Apple's still a sleeper here. I think they may do it by acquiring someone, which I don't think is necessarily a bad move. So far, all they've done is put out papers that made us all really sad. And I'm sorry. But I say that. They've done a great job with the ChatGPT integrations into Apple OS that have been really handy as well. All right. Well, I guess that about wraps us up for today. Special thanks to Logan Kilpatrick and Google DeepMind for joining us today. There are a lot of exciting things coming out of Google right now and all of the industry. And it was really fun to sit down and talk to them and learn some things we could and should be doing with them right now. And you should too. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and drop us a note below. Also, please don't forget to check out the Neuron's daily AI newsletter, where we break down the latest AI news and developments for 500,000 people every morning. And that's all we've got for this episode. We'll see you next time. Farewell for now, humans.
Bye.